Hi everyone! In this tutorial we'll be creating this mini teacup fairy garden. The first thing you'll need is a teacup. I got mine from Goodwill for $2 and I really like this one because it has a big open top so you can put a lot of stuff inside the garden. To create the house, I'll be using polymer clay, so I got these little storage containers from Dollar Tree, and my plan was to use one of these as kind of a mold for the house. So the house will be the size of this, and as you can see, that's a good size within the teacup. So I had some concern that this would melt in the oven when I went to bake the clay, and it did. So I caution you to not use anything plastic or anything like this as a mold for the house. But because I did use the plastic container when I filmed this video, you'll see me doing that, but just make sure that you don't use anything like that. I'd recommend using a rock or just making the house out of solid clay. So I'm taking this Fimo polymer clay that has an effect that makes it kind of look like stone or concrete, and I thought that would be nice to make the house out of, so I'm using that. And I'm just going to work with this until it's warmed up and easy to work with. So I took a pretty big piece of that clay, and once it was warmed up, I just used that plastic container to roll it out, and so it was pretty thin, and I needed it to be big enough to fit over the entire container. So depending on how you're making your house, your process will probably be different. If you're making it out of solid clay, just create a big piece of solid clay that you can add a roof to. So once I got that all wrapped around the container, I just took this blade and I cut the excess off from the bottom. And then on the top, I just folded it over to the top side. Next, I took a toothbrush and I just pressed it into the clay all over the container to give it kind of a stone textured effect. So at this point, it looked like this. Next, I'm taking some brown clay and I'll use this to create the door. So I mixed together a couple colors of brown and I didn't mix it all the way, so it gave it kind of this marbled effect, and I thought that would help it look more like wood grain. So then I just shaped it into the shape of the door and I cut the bottom side off so it would be flat. And once I was happy with the shape, I went ahead and attached it to the house, just pressing lightly to make sure it's stuck on there. So it looked like this. Next, I'm just taking a toothpick and running it through to create kind of a wood grain texture. Just lightly dragging it through. And then I rolled a little piece of that same clay and stuck it on the side to create a doorknob. So it ended up looking like this. Next, I took some aluminum foil and I scrunched that up into a ball. And this will just create kind of a mold for the roof, so it's easier to lay the clay on there. So I just made it so it would fit on top of the container, and then I took some of this green clay and I flattened it way out, and for this I wanted it to kind of be like a leaf, so I made it really thin. So I just kept working with it until it was big enough to fit on the roof. And then I wrapped that around, kind of brought it to a point, and then I very carefully cut off the excess from the back side. Then I just closed that up, kind of stretched out the bottom. Then I took that top part and curled it around like this. Then I just kept working with it until I liked how it looked. Then I took a toothpick and I just smoothed out the seams where the pieces of clay came together. Next, I took some of this moss that I got from Dollar Tree and I just wanted to stick some of this on the roof, and I found that it didn't stick super well, but it helps create a texture, and I did get some on there. So I just kept working with it and adjusting things until I liked how it looked. So here's what it looked like when I finished it, and I went ahead and baked it. And I just wanted to show you here what happened when I baked it. This was that plastic container that was inside. As you can see, it shriveled up in the oven, and the house kind of fell apart and cracked. But I actually was able to fix this. I just used some clay to patch things up and keep the pieces together on the inside, and I used some liquid Sculpey to attach the cracks together. And as you can see here, it worked just fine. Next, I wanted to add more moss to the roof, so I took some hot glue, and you could use other glues like tacky glue for this, and I just used some glue all over the roof to attach more moss. So it ended up looking like this. Next, I took the teacup and I filled it with sand. You'll want to make sure that you don't fill it all the way up because we need room to add the stuff on top. So once the sand was in there, I just took the house and I decided where I wanted to place it and just pushed it slightly into the sand. So once the house was in place, I wanted to add a pond next. So I decided where I wanted to place that, and then I just used my finger to push the sand aside and make a hole for the pond. And I'm using this blue sand from Joann's to fill in the hole and make the pond. And just kind of move that around until the spot was filled up. Once that was in place, I started taking moss and just kind of rolling it into a ball. And I'm trying to create kind of bushes inside the garden. So I just kept adding some until I had kind of a bush shape. Then I took this stuff that I got from Michael's in the fairy garden area and sprinkled it on top to look like little flowers. I added more moss to the other side around the pond. And then next to the house and behind the house. Then I sprinkled more of that stuff from Michael's to create the little flowers and sprinkled some on the roof as well. Then I added some more moss up here, and I decided I wanted to make a big thing of flowers back there next to the house, so I just poured a bunch of that stuff there, and then I poured a bunch of the other color of that stuff right next to it. Then I just kind of moved stuff around and adjusted things. Then I found my finger was too big to get in some of these areas, so I just took a bamboo skewer and pushed things around with it. And then I recovered the pond with blue sand again to cover up some of that stuff that I didn't mean to get in there. And then I did the same thing with the sand over the walkway. Just covering stuff up to make it look cleaner. And then made some final adjustments. And that is the finished fairy garden. I hope you enjoyed this mini teacup fairy garden tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this from my channel, I will put some on screen, and I will see you next time.